The last thing I remember before everything went dark was my mother-in-law's face, mascara running down her cheeks, mouth twisted into something between a scream and a snarl, her manicured finger jabbing toward me like a weapon. "Where's your wife? Who's going to pay for this party?" she shrieked so loud that every single person in that restaurant turned to stare. 47 guests, a 3-tier custom cake, a private dining room at Bellini's that cost me, yes me, $4,800 to reserve. And Karen Mitchell, my beloved mother-in-law, was standing in the middle of it all, demanding to know where her precious daughter had vanished to. But here's the thing. I wasn't the one who should have been answering that question. What happened 6 hours later, at 3 in the morning, when Karen and her husband Richard and my sister-in-law Jennifer all showed up at our front door, pounding so hard the neighbors' porch lights flickered on, that's the part I still can't tell without my hands shaking. Because when my husband Brandon finally opened that door and flipped on the hallway light, the color drained from his face so fast, I thought he was going to collapse right there on the hardwood floor. He went pale. Not embarrassed pale, not caught off guard pale. The kind of pale where a man's entire life flashes before his eyes because he realizes the lie he's been building for 2 years just crumbled in under 10 seconds. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning, to when I still believed I was the luckiest woman in Virginia. My name is Ashley Brennan. Well, Ashley Mitchell Brennan, because Karen insisted I hyphenate when I married her son. The Mitchell name means something in this town, she told me at our engagement dinner, smiling with all her teeth but none of her eyes. I was 26 then. Young, optimistic, and so deeply in love with Brandon Mitchell that I would have tattooed his mother's name on my forehead if she'd asked. Brandon and I met at a housewarming party in Arlington in 2019. My college roommate Megan had just bought a townhouse with her boyfriend, and I almost didn't go because I'd been working double shifts at the dental office where I was office manager. But Megan guilt-tripped me. "Ashley, you haven't left your apartment for anything fun in 3 weeks. Just come for an hour." And so I threw on a sundress and drove over. Brandon was standing by the kitchen island, telling some story about a fishing trip that had the whole room laughing. He was tall, 6'2", with these warm brown eyes and a laugh that made you feel like you were in on the joke, even if you'd just walked in. He worked in commercial insurance, made good money, drove a clean Jeep Grand Cherokee, and when he smiled at me across that kitchen, I felt something shift in my chest like a key turning in a lock. We talked for 3 hours that night. He walked me to my car. He texted me before I even got home. "I know this is fast, but I already want to see you again." We were engaged within a year, married by 2021, and for the first 2 years, I swear to you, it was everything I'd dreamed of. We bought a house in Fairfax, a 3-bedroom colonial with a little backyard and a cherry blossom tree that bloomed every April. I'd stand at the kitchen window in the mornings, coffee in hand, watching the petals fall while Brandon got ready for work upstairs. He'd come down smelling like cedar and soap, kiss my forehead, steal a sip from my mug, and say, "Have a good one, Ash," every single morning, like clockwork, like a promise. I kept working at the dental office. Brandon climbed the ladder at his firm. We had a joint checking account, a savings account with $47,000 in it. I was proud of that number. I'd check it on my banking app like other people check Instagram. And we'd talk about kids sometimes, late at night, tangled up in sheets, his hand on my stomach like he was already imagining it. 2, he'd say, a boy and a girl. The boy first so he can protect his little sister. "What if we get 2 girls?" I'd ask. "Then God help me," he'd laugh. "I'll be outnumbered and bankrupt from dance recitals." It was easy. It was warm. It was the kind of life that makes you afraid to breathe too hard because you don't want to jinx it. But there was one shadow that never quite went away, and her name was Karen. My mother-in-law was a force of nature in the worst possible way. She was 63 years old, had the energy of a woman half her age, and used every ounce of it to make sure the world revolved around her. Karen had been a real estate agent in her prime. Top seller in Loudoun County 3 years running, she'd remind you at every family gathering. And even though she'd retired, she still carried herself like she was closing deals. Everything was a negotiation. Everything was a transaction. And in Karen's economy, I was always in debt. It started small. Comments about my cooking at Thanksgiving. "Oh, Ashley, did you use store-bought pie crust? That's fine. I'm sure not everyone has time to make it from scratch." Remarks about our house. "You know, for what you paid, you really should have held out for something in a better school district. But I guess you weren't thinking about that yet." Little digs about my family. My parents were divorced, my dad lived in a trailer park in West Virginia, and Karen treated that fact like a communicable disease. "Where did you say your father works again?" she'd ask at dinner, knowing full well he was on disability. "He's retired, Karen," I'd say, keeping my voice level. "Retired." "Right." She'd sip her wine like the word tasted different when she said it. Brandon noticed. I know he did. But his response was always the same, gentle deflection. "That's just how Mom is, Ash. She doesn't mean anything by it. She's like that with everyone." Except she wasn't. She wasn't like that with Jennifer, Brandon's younger sister, who'd married a pediatric surgeon named Derek and lived in a 6,000 square foot house in McLean. She wasn't like that with Derek, who Karen treated like the second coming of Christ because he pulled in $480,000 a year and bought her a Tiffany bracelet every Christmas. She was only like that with me. Because in Karen's mind, I was the woman who wasn't good enough for her golden boy. I swallowed it. For 3 years, I swallowed every sour comment, every backhanded compliment, every holiday where I spent 12 hours cooking, only for Karen to say, "Well, it's certainly hearty." I swallowed it because I loved Brandon and because I told myself that keeping the peace was worth more than winning an argument. I had no idea I was swallowing poison. Karen's 65th birthday was in September. She announced 6 months in advance, at Easter dinner, naturally, that she wanted something special this year. 65 is a milestone, she said, dabbing her lips with a cloth napkin. "I've spent my whole life giving to this family. I think I deserve one night where it's all about me." Richard, her husband, nodded quietly. He always nodded quietly. Richard was a retired electrician who'd learned decades ago that agreeing with Karen was the only survival strategy. "I was thinking Bellinis," Karen continued, her eyes sweeping the table like a general surveying troops. "The private dining room, they do a wonderful prefix, and I want everyone there, all the cousins, the Hendersons, Pastor Dave and his wife, 40 people at least." Jennifer smiled. "That sounds beautiful, Mom. Derek and I can chip in." Karen's gaze landed on me. "And Ashley, I assume you and Brandon can handle the venue reservation, since Jennifer and Derek are covering the catering upgrade?" I blinked. The private room at Bellini's was $4,800 for a Saturday evening. I knew because Megan had looked into it for her 30th birthday and nearly fainted at the quote. "Of course," Brandon said before I could respond. He squeezed my hand under the table. "We've got it." Later, in the car, I turned to him. "Brandon, $4,800? We were going to use that money to fix the roof." "I know, babe, but it's Mom's 65th. We'll figure out the roof." "We've been figuring out the roof since March. There's a water stain on the guest bedroom ceiling that's getting bigger every week." He sighed, that particular sigh he saved for when I brought up something he didn't want to deal with. "Ash, it's one night. She's my mother. Can we just not make this a thing?" So I didn't make it a thing. I called Bellini's the next morning, gave them my credit card number, and booked the private dining room for September 14th. $4,800. I watched the charge appear on my statement and felt something tighten behind my ribs. Not anger exactly, but a weariness that had been building for longer than I wanted to admit. Over the next few months, I handled everything. The invitations, the seating chart, the cake from a custom bakery in Georgetown, another $600 because Karen wanted fondant flowers and gold leaf, the playlist for the Bluetooth speaker because Karen hated whatever noise restaurants play these days, the gift, a Le Creuset cookware set, $350 because Jennifer texted me that Karen had been hinting about it. Brandon's contribution? He told me the guest list looked great and asked if I'd remembered to invite his college buddy, Travis. I didn't complain. I organized. I planned. I spreadsheeted the entire event like I was managing a small wedding, because that's what I did. That's who I was in this family, the one who handled things, quietly, invisibly, while everyone else showed up and took credit. And then, 3 weeks before Karen's birthday, something happened that cracked the foundation I'd been standing on. It was a Tuesday. Brandon had left for work at 7:30 like always. I had the day off, a rare one, and I'd planned to deep clean the kitchen and maybe finally call a roofer for an estimate. I was unloading the dishwasher when I noticed Brandon's iPad on the counter. He usually took it to work, but he'd been rushing that morning. I wasn't snooping. I need you to understand that. I picked it up to move it off the counter, and the screen lit up with a notification, a text message, from a contact saved as T. Reynolds, work. The preview read, "Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about..." The rest was cut off. My hand froze. The dishwasher was still humming. The cherry blossom tree outside the window swayed in the breeze like nothing in the world was wrong. I stood there for what felt like 5 minutes, but was probably 30 seconds, holding that iPad like it was a grenade with the pin pulled. My thumb hovered over the screen. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. I set the iPad down. I stepped back. I told myself it was nothing, a weird joke, a misread preview, maybe even a wrong number that Brandon hadn't bothered to correct. But my hands were trembling when I picked up the sponge, and the kitchen didn't get cleaned that day. I sat on the couch instead, staring at nothing, replaying every late night Brandon had worked in the past 6 months, every time he'd stepped outside to take a call, every shower he took the second he walked through the door. When he came home that evening, he kissed my forehead, stole a sip of my coffee, decaf, it was 7 p.m., and said, "Have a good day off, Ash?" I looked at his face, those warm brown eyes, that easy smile. "Yeah," I said. It was quiet. He grabbed his iPad from the counter without a flicker of hesitation, tucked it under his arm, and headed upstairs. And something inside me, something that had been holding steady for 3 years, began to crack. I didn't sleep that night, not really. I lay next to Brandon in our bed, listening to him breathe, slow, steady, the breathing of a man with absolutely nothing on his conscience. And I stared at the ceiling fan making its lazy circles in the dark. My mind kept replaying that text preview like a scratched record. Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about what? About who? T. Reynolds, work. I'd never heard Brandon mention anyone named Reynolds at his firm. He talked about his boss, Greg Dalton. He talked about his work buddy, Marcus. He'd mentioned a new analyst named Priya. But Reynolds? Never. By Wednesday morning, I'd convinced myself I was overreacting. People send weird texts. Maybe it was about a deal they'd closed. Maybe amazing referred to a client dinner. Maybe I was becoming one of those wives, the suspicious, insecure kind that Karen probably always assumed I was. So I buried it. I went back to planning the birthday party. I confirmed the head count with Bellini's, 47 guests, final answer. I picked up Karen's cake and stored it in our garage refrigerator. I bought a new dress, navy blue, modest neckline, because Karen once told me I showed too much chest for a family event. $89 at Nordstrom Rack that I couldn't really afford. And then, 10 days before the party, I found the second thing. Brandon's car was in the shop for new brake pads, so he'd asked me to drop him at work that morning. After I pulled back into our driveway, I noticed his gym bag on the back seat. He'd asked me to wash his gym clothes, a normal request, nothing suspicious. I unzipped the bag on the laundry room floor and pulled out shorts, a tank top, socks, and at the very bottom, tucked inside a rolled-up towel, a receipt. The Willard Intercontinental, Washington, D.C., one night, $389, dated the previous Friday, a night Brandon had told me he was at a work retreat in Tyson's Corner. I sat on the laundry room floor with that receipt in my hands, and the room tilted. The washing machine hummed beside me. I could smell his sweat on the gym clothes, cedar and something sharper underneath, and my stomach turned. A hotel in D.C., $389, on a night he said he was 15 miles away at a corporate team-building event. I photographed the receipt with my phone. Then I folded it back into the towel, put it back in the bag, and washed his clothes like nothing happened. My hands moved on autopilot. Detergent, cold cycle, start. My brain was somewhere else entirely. That evening I tested him. Casually, over dinner, grilled chicken and roasted vegetables, a meal I no longer had any appetite for. "How was that retreat last Friday?" I asked, twirling my fork. "You never really told me about it." Brandon didn't even look up from his plate. "It was fine. Boring, honestly. Greg made us do one of those trust fall exercises. Marcus almost dropped Priya," he laughed. "Standard corporate nonsense." "Where was it again? The Marriott in Tyson's?" "Yeah, the Marriott. You know the one off Route 7. He lied without blinking, without a single hesitation, like lying to me was as natural as breathing. I nodded and said, "Sounds awful," and he laughed again, and I excused myself to the bathroom, where I gripped the edge of the sink and stared at my reflection. Pale, hollow-eyed, the face of a woman watching her life unravel one thread at a time. I wanted to confront him right then. Every cell in my body screamed at me to walk back into that kitchen, slam the receipt on the table, and say, "Explain this." But something held me back. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was strategy, or maybe it was the fact that Karen's birthday was 10 days away and I'd already spent $5,750 of our money on it. And some desperate part of me thought, if I just get through this party, I can deal with everything else after. That was my false hope. The idea that there was an after where things could be fixed. The week before the party, I did something I'm not proud of. I went through Brandon's phone. He was in the shower, a long one, the kind he'd started taking every night, and his phone was on the nightstand, face down. I knew his passcode. He'd never changed it. 0914. Our wedding anniversary, September 14th, the same date as his mother's birthday party. The irony still makes me sick. I opened his messages. T. Reynolds. Work was right there, third from the top. I tapped it, and my world ended. Her name was Tara Reynolds. She was a claims adjuster at a partner firm, and from the messages, hundreds of them stretching back 18 months, she wasn't just someone Brandon was sleeping with. She was someone he was planning a future with. I scrolled with numb fingers, my ears straining for any change in the sound of the shower. The messages were devastating in their intimacy. Not just sexual, though those were there too, graphic enough to make my vision blur, but domestic, mundane, the kind of conversations that belong to a couple. "Should we look at that place in Alexandria this weekend?" Tara had written 3 weeks ago. "Let me figure out the timing," Brandon replied. "Ash is busy with my mom's party stuff, so she won't notice." "When are you going to tell her?" "After Mom's birthday. I can't do it before. She'd blow up the whole thing, and my mom would never forgive me." "I'm tired of waiting, Bea." "I know, baby. 2 more weeks. I promise." I read that exchange 4 times. Each time the words rearranged themselves into something more grotesque. He wasn't just cheating. He was leaving. He had an exit strategy, a timeline, and I, Ashley Mitchell Brennan, the woman who'd spent 6 months planning his mother's birthday party and 3 years swallowing his mother's contempt, was a problem to be managed until the timing was convenient. The shower turned off. I put the phone back, screen down, exact same position. I got into bed. I pulled the covers up. When Brandon came out in his towel, steam trailing behind him, I pretended to be asleep. He climbed in beside me. "Night, Ash," he murmured and kissed my shoulder. I lay perfectly still while tears slid sideways across my temples and disappeared into the pillow. The next morning, I called my best friend Megan from the parking lot of the dental office before my shift. He's cheating, I said. No preamble. Brandon's been seeing someone for a year and a half, and he's planning to leave me after his mom's birthday party. Silence. Then, Ashley, are you sure? I read the messages, Meg. Hundreds of them. They're looking at apartments together. Oh my God, I heard her exhale. Oh my God, what are you going to do? I don't know. The party's Saturday. Forget the party. Ashley, you need to call a lawyer. I already spent nearly $6,000 on this party. Our money. My credit card. So what? Let Karen eat at McDonald's. This isn't about a party anymore. But that's where Megan was wrong. It was absolutely about the party. Because sitting in that parking lot, watching the morning sun hit the windshield, something crystallized inside me, hard and cold and perfectly clear. Brandon wanted to use the party as his cover. He wanted me to smile and host and pay for his mother's celebration, and then he'd walk away, and Karen and Jennifer and all 47 guests would remember me as the woman who threw a lovely party before she got dumped. No, absolutely not. If he wanted to play a timing game, then two could play. Meg, I said slowly, I need you to do me a favor, and I need you not to ask questions until after Saturday. Ashley, you're scaring me. Good, that means I'm finally thinking clearly. The next 5 days were the most surreal performance of my life. I smiled at Brandon over breakfast. I finalized the seating chart. I called Bellini's to confirm the wine selection. I picked up Karen's Le Creuset set from Williams-Sonoma, wrapped it in gold paper, wrote the card, to the most dedicated mother and grandmother, with love, Ashley and Brandon. Every gesture was a lie wrapped in gift paper, and I delivered each one flawlessly. On Thursday night, 2 days before the party, Karen called me directly. This was unusual. She typically communicated through Brandon, as if I were a personal assistant rather than a daughter-in-law. Ashley, I need to discuss the seating, she said, skipping hello entirely. I want Jennifer and Derek at my table, obviously, and Pastor Dave, and the Hendersons. You and Brandon can sit at table 3. Table 3, the farthest table from the head, the one near the kitchen doors. Of course, Karen, I said sweetly, whatever makes you happy. Also, I've invited 2 more people, my friend Diane and her daughter. Can you adjust with the restaurant? 2 more guests, 2 days before, after I'd already confirmed and paid. I'll handle it, I said. Wonderful. Oh, and Ashley, wear something appropriate. It's a nice restaurant. She hung up before I could respond. I stood in my kitchen, phone in hand, staring at the cherry blossom tree in the backyard. Bare now, September stripped, just branches reaching at empty sky. And I laughed. Really laughed. The kind of laugh that sounds a little unhinged because it is. This woman had spent 3 years diminishing me, and her son had spent 18 months betraying me, and they both still expected me to show up, shut up, and foot the bill. Saturday was going to be very, very different from what they imagined. I texted Megan, "It's set. Be ready at 7:15. She replied with one word, "Ready." I locked my phone, opened my laptop, and pulled up our joint banking app. The savings account, my precious $47,000, now showed $31,200. I blinked, refreshed the page. $31,200. $15,800 had been transferred out over the past 3 months, in increments small enough that I hadn't noticed because I'd been too busy planning a birthday party for a woman who despised me. I clicked the transaction history. The transfers went to an account I didn't recognize. My hands were shaking again. But this time, it wasn't from grief. It was from something sharper, something with teeth. I screenshot every single transaction. Then I closed the laptop, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat in the dark living room, planning. Saturday was 2 days away, and I had work to do. Friday morning, I woke up at 4 a.m. with my heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. Brandon was asleep beside me, one arm thrown over his face, phone tucked under his pillow like a teenager hiding a diary. I lay there in the gray pre-dawn light and felt the full weight of what I was about to do settle onto my chest like a concrete slab. Because here's what nobody tells you about discovering your husband's affair. The betrayal doesn't hit you once. It hits you in waves. At the grocery store when you reach for his favorite cereal. In the shower when you remember him saying, "I love you," 3 hours before texting another woman. At 2 a.m. when you're lying next to a stranger wearing your husband's face. Each wave is worse than the last, because each one strips away another layer of denial. And that Friday morning, the final layer came off. I got up, went downstairs, made coffee I couldn't drink, and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. I opened the joint savings account one more time. $31,200, down from $47,000. Then I opened my personal checking, the account I'd had since before we married, where my direct deposit from the dental office went before I transferred most of it to our joint account every month. Balance, $4,212. That was everything I had that was solely mine. $4,212 to my name after 3 years of marriage to a man who'd been siphoning our savings to fund his exit strategy. I stared at that number until the screen blurred. Then I closed the laptop and cried. Silently, viciously, with my fist pressed against my mouth so hard I tasted blood where my teeth cut the inside of my lip. I cried for the house I'd thought was ours, for the babies we'd whispered about in the dark, for the woman I'd been 6 days ago who checked her savings account with pride instead of horror. When I was done, I washed my face with cold water, dried it on a dish towel, and got to work. At 8:30 a.m., I sat in the parking lot of the law office of Sandra Chen on Main Street in Fairfax. Megan had found her. She's a shark, Ash. My coworker's sister used her in her divorce and walked away with the house, the car, and half his 401k. Sandra was small, sharp-featured, maybe 50, with reading glasses on a chain and a handshake that could crack a walnut. Her office smelled like coffee and printer toner. She listened to everything without interrupting. The texts, the hotel receipt, the missing $15,800, the birthday party, all of it. When I finished, she took off her glasses and looked at me the way a surgeon looks at an x-ray. "Do you have screenshots of everything? The messages, the bank transfers, the hotel receipt?" "All of it, on my phone and backed up to my email." "Good. That's good, Ashley." She leaned forward. "Here's what I need you to understand. Virginia is an equitable distribution state. That means everything acquired during the marriage gets divided fairly. Not necessarily equally, but fairly. The money he moved? That's called dissipation of marital assets. A judge will not look kindly on that. "What about the party?" I asked. "I spent almost $6,000 on his mother's birthday, on my credit card." "Marital debt incurred with the other spouse's knowledge and encouragement. We can argue that's shared." She made a note. "Now, you said the party is tomorrow. Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. And you have a plan." "I have a plan." Sandra studied me for a long moment. "I'm not going to ask what it is, but I will tell you this. Don't do anything that could be used against you in court. No destruction of property, no public threats, no physical altercation. You stay calm, you stay clean, and you let his own behavior be the story. Understood?" "Understood." She handed me her card. "Call me Monday morning, first thing." I walked out of that office and sat in my car for 10 minutes, gripping the steering wheel. My knuckles were white. My jaw ached from clenching. But somewhere beneath the fear and the grief and the rage, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Control. Friday afternoon, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to Bellini's. I spoke to the events manager, a woman named Rosa, who I'd been coordinating with for months. "Rosa, I need to make a change to the payment arrangement for tomorrow. I'd like to move the reservation charge off my personal credit card and have the host billed directly at the event. Is that possible?" Rosa hesitated. "We can process a new card at the event, but we'd need authorization. The original card holder would need to—" "I'm the original card holder. I'm authorizing the change. I'd like a full refund to my card and the new payment collected tomorrow evening from a different party." "That's unusual." But if you're the card holder of record, we can process a refund and collect new payment at the event. Perfect. Thank you, Rosa. The second call was to Megan. Tomorrow night, I'm going to leave the party at 7:15, right after the appetizers are served. You'll be outside in your car. And then what? And then we go to my house and I pack a bag. Ashley, Megan's voice cracked, are you sure you don't want to just skip the party entirely? No, I need to be there. I need them to see me walk in, smile, play the part for 15 minutes, and then I need them to watch me leave. Karen wants a night that's all about her? Fine, but she's going to find out exactly what that costs when I'm not the one holding the checkbook. The third call was the hardest. I called my mom. She lived in Roanoke, had moved there after the divorce from my dad, got a job at a library, built a quiet life. We talked every Sunday, and she knew Karen was difficult, but I'd never told her how bad it really was. I'd been too proud, too ashamed, too busy pretending everything was fine. Mom, I said, I'm leaving Brandon. A pause, the sound of a TV being muted. Then her voice, steady and warm. Tell me everything, sweetheart. And I did. All of it. The affair, the money, the texts about Alexandria Apartments, the 18 months of lies. When I finished, I expected her to cry. Instead, she said something that hit me like a freight train. Ashley, I want you to listen to me. When your father started lying to me, I stayed for 6 more years because I was afraid of what people would think. I lost 6 years. Don't you dare lose one more day. I'm not going to, Mom. Good. Now, do you need money? I have some saved. No, I need you to be home Sunday because I might be driving to Roanoke. I'll be here. I'll always be here. I hung up and pressed the phone against my forehead, breathing hard. My mother, the woman Karen sneered about at dinner parties, was the only person in my life offering me unconditional help. The irony tasted like metal. Friday night was a performance worthy of an Oscar. Brandon came home at 6:30 with a bottle of wine and a grin. Big day tomorrow, Ash. Mom called me twice to confirm the seating chart. You'd think she was planning a state dinner. Everything's ready, I said, pouring him a glass. You're amazing, you know that? He kissed my cheek. Seriously, this party wouldn't exist without you. I smiled. It felt like cracking plaster. That's what family does. We ate dinner, we watched TV. He fell asleep on the couch, and I covered him with a blanket. The soft gray one we'd bought together at Target when we first moved in, back when spending $30 on a throw felt like a luxury. I stood over him and looked at his face, slack and peaceful, and I tried to find the man I'd married, the one who texted me before I got home from our first meeting, the one who held my hand under the table while volunteering me for a $4,800 restaurant bill. Same face, same man. I just hadn't been seeing clearly. I went upstairs, packed a small duffel bag, clothes for 3 days, my passport, my laptop, the folder of screenshots I'd printed at the FedEx store that afternoon, and hid it in the trunk of my car at midnight while Brandon snored on the couch. Then I went to bed and set my alarm for Saturday morning. September 14th, Karen's 65th birthday, my wedding anniversary date, and the day my husband had promised his girlfriend he'd finally end our marriage. He just didn't know I was going to beat him to it. Saturday arrived bright and clear, one of those perfect Virginia September days where the sky is so blue it looks fake. I put on my navy dress, the modest one, applied my makeup carefully, waterproof mascara because I knew I'd need it, curled my hair, sprayed perfume on my wrists. Brandon came downstairs in his charcoal suit, looking like a magazine ad. You look beautiful, Ash. Thank you. My voice was steady. My hands were not. We drove to Bellini's in silence. The private dining room was gorgeous. White tablecloths, candles, the 3-tier cake displayed on a pedestal near the entrance. 49 guests filtered in. Karen arrived in a red dress, diamonds at her throat, Richard trailing behind her like a shadow. Jennifer and Derek, Pastor Dave and his wife, the Hendersons, cousins I'd met once at Thanksgiving and never again. Karen swept past me with a nod. Not a thank you, not a, this looks wonderful. A nod, like I was the valet who'd parked her car. The appetizers were served at 7:10, bruschetta, shrimp cocktail, stuffed mushrooms. I watched Brandon laugh with Marcus across the room. I watched Karen hold court at table 1, basking in attention like a lizard on a warm rock. At 7:14, I picked up my clutch. I touched Brandon's arm. "I'm going to the restroom," I said softly. "Okay, babe." He didn't even look at me. I walked past the restrooms, through the back hallway, out the service entrance, and into Megan's idling Honda Civic. She looked at me, eyes wide. "You okay?" "Drive," I said, and she did. Behind us, Bellini's glowed golden in the rearview mirror, full of people eating food I'd paid for, celebrating a woman who'd never once said my name with kindness. And somewhere inside, my husband was about to discover that the bill, all of it, was now his problem. My phone buzzed in my clutch, then again, then a third time. I didn't look. Not yet. Megan glanced at me. "Ashley, you're shaking." I was. My whole body trembled like a plucked wire. But when I spoke, my voice was the calmest it had been in months. "Take me home. I have one more thing to do before they figure out I'm gone." Megan pulled into our driveway at 7:31. I know the exact time because I looked at the dashboard clock and thought, right now they're pouring the second round of wine. Right now, Karen is telling the Hendersons about the time she sold a $2.3 million estate in Ashburn. Right now, Brandon is checking his phone under the table, texting Tara, counting down the days until he's free of me. And right now, I'm free of all of them. "Keep the engine running," I told Megan. "This won't take long." I went inside through the garage. The house was dark and quiet, that particular stillness of a home that doesn't know it's about to stop being yours. I walked through the kitchen where Brandon stole sips of my coffee every morning, past the living room where we'd watched 100 movies under that gray Target blanket, up the stairs to our bedroom where I opened the closet and grabbed the second duffel bag I'd packed that morning, the important one, documents. Our marriage certificate, my birth certificate, the external hard drive where I'd backed up every screenshot, every bank statement, every text message between Brandon and Tara Reynolds. Then I did the one thing I'd been planning since Thursday. I sat down at Brandon's desk, opened his laptop, same password, 0914, the man was nothing if not consistent, and logged into our joint savings account, the $31,200 that remained. Half of it was mine, legally, morally, mathematically mine. Sandra Chen had confirmed it that morning. You're entitled to protect your share of marital assets, especially when there's documented dissipation by the other party. I transferred $15,600 to my personal checking account, exactly half, not a penny more. I wanted the record to be clean. I wanted a judge to look at this and see a woman who took only what was hers while her husband had been stealing for months. The transfer processed. My personal checking now showed $19,812. It wasn't a fortune, but it was a foundation. I closed the laptop, grabbed both bags, and walked out of the house I'd loved for 3 years. At the front door, I paused. The hallway smelled like cedar and soap. Brandon's scent, baked into the walls, the carpets, the air itself. For one terrible second, I wanted to crumble. I wanted to drop the bags and crawl into bed and pretend I'd never seen that iPad notification, never found that receipt, never read those messages. Then I thought about Karen's nod when she walked past me at Bellini's, that single, dismissive nod, and I pulled the door shut behind me. Megan drove me to her townhouse in Arlington, the same one where I'd met Brandon 4 years ago, the same kitchen island where he'd stood telling his fishing story. I sat on Megan's couch and finally looked at my phone. 23 missed calls, 14 texts. Brandon, 7:22 p.m. Where are you? Mom's asking. Brandon, 7:28 p.m. Ash, you've been in the bathroom for 15 minutes. Everything okay? Brandon, 7:34 p.m. Ashley, answer your phone. Brandon, 7:41 p.m. Where the hell are you? Mom is losing it. Karen, 7:38 p.m. Ashley, your absence is noticed. This is extremely rude. Karen, 7:45 p.m. Brandon says you left on my birthday? Jennifer, 7:50 p.m. Ashley, what is going on? Mom is crying. Brandon, 7:52 p.m. The restaurant says you canceled the credit card on the reservation. What is happening? That one made me smile. Actually smile. A real one. The first in weeks. Rosa Epolini's had done exactly what I'd asked. My $4,800 refund was processing. The restaurant was now asking the party to provide a new form of payment. For 49 guests. Prix-fixe menu. Premium wine selection. 3-tier custom cake. Brandon, 8:01 p.m. Ashley, I swear to God, call me back right now. Brandon, 8:14 p.m. I had to put the whole thing on my card. $6,200. What is wrong with you? Brandon, 8:15 p.m. Mom is humiliated. Humiliated. Are you having some kind of breakdown? I read that word 3 times. Breakdown. That was going to be his narrative. Ashley had a breakdown. Poor Brandon, dealing with his unstable wife. That's what he'd tell people. That's what he'd tell Tara. I typed one reply, to Brandon only, 5 words. Ask Tara to explain. Then I turned off my phone, set it face down on Megan's coffee table, and said, Do you have wine? I have 2 bottles and ice cream. Both. We sat on her couch, and I told her everything I hadn't been able to say over the phone. The full text history, the apartment hunting in Alexandria, Brandon's promise of 2 more weeks, the $15,800 siphoned from our savings. Megan listened with her hand over her mouth, tears running down her cheeks. That bastard, she whispered. That absolute bastard. The worst part, I said, swirling cheap Merlot in a coffee mug because Megan's wine glasses were all dirty. He was going to let me throw the party, clean up the mess, probably even write the thank you notes, and then dump me. I was going to be the last one to know and the first one blamed. Not anymore. No, not anymore. At 9:47 p.m., my phone, which I'd turned back on to check one thing, lit up with a call from Jennifer. I answered. Ashley, Jennifer's voice was ice. You need to explain yourself. Mom is devastated. She's been crying for 2 hours. Dad had to take her home early. The whole party was ruined. I'm sorry Karen's party was disrupted, Jennifer. Disrupted? You abandoned the event and stuck Brandon with a $6,000 bill on their anniversary dinner. Mom says she's never been so humiliated in her life. Jennifer, I need you to ask your brother one question. What? Ask him who Tara Reynolds is. Silence. A long one. I could hear restaurant noise fading. She must have been walking outside. Who? Jennifer said, but her voice had changed. Softer, uncertain. Tara Reynolds. Ask Brandon. And while you're at it, ask him where the $15,800 from our savings account went. Because it didn't go to the roof. More silence. Then, carefully, Ashley, what are you saying? I'm saying your brother has been having an affair for 18 months. He's been moving our money into a separate account, and he was planning to leave me the week after your mother's birthday. I have the texts. I have the bank records. I have a receipt from the Willard Intercontinental from a night he told me he was at a corporate retreat in Tyson's Corner. So when your mother asks who's going to pay for her party, you tell her to ask the son she raised, because I'm done paying for this family. I hung up. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the phone on the carpet. Megan picked it up and set it on the table. That, she said, was the most savage thing I've ever witnessed. I think I'm going to throw up. That's the adrenaline. Drink your wine. I drank my wine. The night crawled by. Megan made me eat half a turkey sandwich. We watched some terrible reality show without seeing it. At 11, I brushed my teeth with a spare toothbrush and lay down in Megan's guest room, staring at yet another ceiling fan. My phone buzzed one more time. Brandon. Ash, please, we need to talk. Whatever you think is happening, it's not what it looks like. Please come home. It's not what it looks like. The most predictable sentence in the English language. I could have written his script for him. I didn't reply. I closed my eyes and lay in the dark, and for the first time in months, the knot behind my ribs loosened just a fraction. Not because I was okay, I was far from okay, but because the pretending was over. The performance was done. I didn't have to smile at Karen, laugh at Brandon's jokes, or stand in my kitchen wondering if I was crazy. The truth was out, ugly and irrevocable, and there was a terrible freedom in that. I fell asleep at midnight. At 2:47 a.m., Megan shook me awake. Ashley, wake up. Your phone. Someone's calling from your house. I blinked in the dark. What? It's your home number, the landline. We still had a landline. Brandon insisted on it for the home security system. I grabbed the phone. Hello? It wasn't Brandon. It was Karen. And she was screaming. You ungrateful, conniving little... You ruined my birthday. You humiliated my son. We're at your house right now and you're not even here. Where are you? In the background, I heard Richard's quiet voice. Karen, calm down. And Jennifer saying something I couldn't make out. And then Brandon's voice, closer, strained. Mom, give me the phone. Mom, give me the... Your wife, Karen spat the word, accused my son of having an affair. An affair! Brandon would never. This is your sick little scheme to get out of paying for a party you volunteered to host. Karen, my voice came out flat and hard, a voice I didn't recognize. Put Brandon on the phone. Shuffling. Then Brandon, breathing fast. Ash, where are you? Mom and Dad and Jen drove to the house. I'm here. We need to talk. Did you tell them? Tell them what? Did you tell them about Tara, Brandon? The silence that followed was the loudest sound I've ever heard. 3 seconds. 4. 5. In that silence, I heard Karen in the background. Who's Tara? Brandon, who is she talking about? And then Jennifer's voice, sharp and clear. Brandon, I asked you in the car, who is Tara Reynolds? And I heard it, the exact moment the lie collapsed. A sound like all the air leaving a room. Brandon tried to speak and nothing came out. Just this strangled, wet noise, like a man choking on something he'd swallowed too long ago to cough up now. Brandon Mitchell, Karen said, and her voice was different, lower, dangerous, the voice of a woman who suddenly understands that the bomb isn't aimed where she thought it was. You answer your sister right now. Who is Tara Reynolds? I stayed on the line. I didn't say a word. I just listened as the hallway light in my house, our house, illuminated the truth that Brandon had been hiding for 18 months. And even through the phone, even from 30 miles away in Megan's guest room, I could feel the exact moment Karen's fury pivoted away from me and landed with its full, devastating weight on her golden boy. Oh my God, Jennifer whispered. Oh my God, Brandon. I can explain, Brandon said, the most useless sentence ever spoken. You can explain? Karen's voice cracked. You, while your wife was planning my birthday, you were... I hung up. I set the phone on the nightstand. Megan stood in the doorway, backlit by the hall light, eyes wide. What just happened? She asked. Karma, I said. Karma just happened. But I was wrong. That wasn't karma. Karma was what came next, what walked through Megan's front door at 3:15 a.m. when the doorbell rang and I opened it to find not Brandon, not Karen, but someone I had never seen before in my life. A woman, late 20s, dark hair, mascara smeared, visibly pregnant. She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes and said, "Are you Ashley? I'm Tara, and we need to talk, because everything he told me about you was a lie." I stood in Megan's doorway at 3:15 in the morning, barefoot, wearing a borrowed t-shirt and sweatpants, staring at a pregnant woman I'd never met, and the world tilted on its axis one final time. Tara Reynolds was not what I'd imagined. In my mind, she'd been some faceless villain, a name on a screen, a threat without a body. But here she was, 5'4", dark circles under her eyes, a small but unmistakable bump beneath her wrinkled blouse, and hands that were trembling as badly as mine. "How did you find me?" I asked. Brandon's phone. Her voice was raw, scraped hollow. He left it unlocked when he was arguing with his mother. "I saw your text. Ask Tara to explain, and I went through his messages to find your friend Megan's address. He had it from some party invitation years ago." Megan appeared behind me, arms crossed. "You've got some nerve showing up here." "Megan," I said quietly, "let her in." We sat in Megan's living room, me on the couch, Tara in the armchair, Megan standing by the kitchen like a bodyguard. The clock on the wall ticked. Outside, Arlington was silent. "How far along?" I asked. My voice didn't sound like mine. 4 months, Tara put her hand on her stomach. "He told me you were separated, that you'd been living apart since January, that the divorce was filed and you were just waiting on the paperwork." My laugh came out broken. "We slept in the same bed every single night. He kissed me goodbye every morning." Tara closed her eyes. A tear slid down her cheek, and she didn't wipe it. "I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. He said you were controlling, that his mother hated you, that the marriage had been dead for years. He said the house was his and you were dragging your feet on moving out." "The house," I repeated slowly, "is in both our names. And I spent the last 6 months planning his mother's birthday party while he was apartment hunting with you in Alexandria." Tara opened her purse with shaking hands and pulled out a phone. "I want to show you something." She scrolled, then turned the screen toward me. It was a Zillow listing, a 2-bedroom in Alexandria, $2,800 a month. And below it, a text from Brandon. "Put the deposit down. I'll transfer the money Friday. Starting fresh, baby." The deposit. That's where part of the $15,800 went. He'd been funding their new life with our savings, the money I'd watched grow for 3 years, the number I'd checked with pride, the future I thought we were building together. "When did he tell you about me?" I asked. "The real me, not the version he invented." "Tonight. He didn't tell me. Your sister-in-law did." Tara's voice cracked. "Jennifer called me 20 minutes ago. She found my number in Brandon's phone after you hung up. She said, 'My brother's wife didn't leave him. He's been lying to everyone, and if you're smart, you'll go talk to Ashley before he gets to you first.'" Jennifer. I hadn't expected that. "She also told me about the party," Tara continued. "How you planned the whole thing, how you paid for everything, how Karen treated you." She looked at me with an expression I recognized, the look of a woman whose entire reality has just been demolished. "Ashley, I'm so sorry." I sat with that apology for a long moment. This woman hadn't known. She'd been lied to as thoroughly as I had. Brandon hadn't just cheated. He'd built 2 separate worlds and played God in both of them. And Tara and I were both his victims. "It's not your fault," I said, and I meant it. Megan handed Tara a glass of water. "What are you going to do?" she asked her. "I have a sister in Richmond. I can stay with her." Tara took a shaky sip. "But first, I need Ashley to know something. Brandon told me he had a separate savings account. $40,000, he said. He told me it was his inheritance from a grandfather. He was going to use it for the apartment, the baby, everything." My blood went cold. There was no inheritance. That was our joint savings. He stole from our marriage to build a life with you. Tara set the glass down. Her jaw tightened. Then he stole from both of us. At 4 a.m., Tara left. She gave me her phone number, and I gave her Sandra Chen's name. "Call her Monday," I said. "You're going to need a lawyer, too." She paused at the door. "He told me you were cold, that you never laughed, never wanted kids, that you were obsessed with money." "I wanted 2 kids," I said, "a boy and a girl." Tara pressed her lips together, nodded once, and walked into the dark. Monday morning, I was in Sandra Chen's office at 8:01 a.m. I laid everything on her desk: the screenshots, the bank records, the hotel receipt, the Zillow listing Tara had forwarded me, and a typed timeline of every lie Brandon had told in 18 months. Sandra reviewed it all in silence, her reading glasses reflecting the glow of her monitor. When she finished, she looked up. "This is one of the most thorough cases of marital asset dissipation I've seen in 20 years. The affair, the hidden transfers, the apartment deposit. A judge will not be kind to him." "What about the pregnancy?" I asked. "That strengthens your case. It demonstrates the duration and seriousness of the extramarital relationship." "Ashley, I'm going to file for divorce today. I'm also going to request a temporary restraining order on the remaining funds in the joint account so he can't move another penny." "Do it." Brandon called me 41 times between Saturday night and Monday afternoon. I answered once, on Monday at noon, sitting in my car outside Megan's townhouse. "Ash, please." His voice was wrecked, hoarse. "I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but we can work through this. We can go to counseling." "She's pregnant, Brandon." Silence. 4 months pregnant, with your child, while you were lying in bed next to me talking about baby names. "Ash, don't call me that. You don't get to call me that anymore." My voice was steel. "You'll be hearing from my attorney. And Brandon, your mother called me ungrateful. She called me conniving. She said I ruined her birthday. You should tell her the truth. All of it. Because if you don't, I will." I hung up and blocked his number. The divorce took 5 months. Sandra Chen earned every penny of her fee. The judge reviewed the evidence, all of it, and the ruling was decisive. I received 60% of the remaining marital assets, including my share of the home equity. Brandon was ordered to reimburse the $15,800 in dissipated funds. The $4,800 I'd originally put on my credit card for Bellini's, the judge included that too, ruling that Brandon had pressured me into the expense. Total judgment in my favor, $94,000 when the house sold. Brandon's firm found out about the affair through the grapevine. Commercial insurance is a small world in Northern Virginia. He wasn't fired, but he was passed over for the promotion he'd been banking on. Last I heard, he'd moved into that Alexandria apartment alone. Tara had gone to Richmond. Whether they stayed in contact, I didn't ask and didn't care. Karen never apologized, not once. But Jennifer did. She called me 3 weeks after the party, her voice careful and quiet. "I didn't know, Ashley, about any of it. And I'm sorry, not just about Brandon, but about how Mom treated you. I saw it. I should have said something years ago." "Why didn't you?" A long pause. "Because it was easier not to. And that's not good enough. I know that." It wasn't good enough, but it was honest, and after 18 months of lies, honesty felt like cold water in a desert. I moved to Roanoke. My mom helped me find a 1-bedroom apartment 3 miles from her house, small, clean, with a window that caught the morning sun. I transferred to a dental office downtown, started over as office manager, rebuilt my savings dollar by dollar. The first month, I checked my bank balance obsessively, terrified of seeing unauthorized transfers. By the 3rd month, I stopped flinching. On a Saturday in April, 7 months after Karen's birthday, I was unpacking the last box in my apartment when I found it at the bottom, the gray Target blanket. I'd grabbed it without thinking the night I left. I held it for a long time, rubbing the fabric between my fingers, remembering the woman who'd bought it with a man she loved in a life that wasn't real. I folded it neatly, drove to Goodwill, and donated it. Walking back to my car, I passed a cherry blossom tree in full bloom. Petals drifted across the parking lot like confetti. I stopped, tilted my face toward the sun, and breathed, deeply, fully, without fear. My phone buzzed. Megan. Happy Saturday, warrior. Brunch tomorrow? I smiled. A real one. Here's what I know now that I didn't know a year ago. The most expensive thing in my marriage was never the party, the cake, or the private dining room at Bellini's. It was my silence. Every swallowed insult, every ignored red flag, every time I said, "It's fine," when it wasn't. That was the real bill, and I've been paying it for years without realizing the balance was eating me alive. Karen wanted one night where it was all about her. She got it. And in the middle of that night, I finally made one decision that was all about me. That's the thing about people who treat you like you're invisible. They never see you leave. And by the time they notice the empty chair, the lights are already on, and there's nowhere left to hide.